Welcome to Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church's online worship. I'm John Howard, and my pronouns are he, him. I serve as a member of the congregation's Board of Trustees. Our mission calls us to celebrate diversity, encourage spiritual growth, and promote social responsibility while we travel on and care for this earth. We are a freely gathered, open, welcoming community supported by your contributions, which can be made with the donate button on our website, by going to our Breeze program if you are a member, or by mailing your check to 524 Allen Avenue, Portland, Maine. Please note if the donation is your pledge or a gift to Share the Plate. Our Share the Plate for May has not been designated as I am recording this, but you can go to Share the Plate on our website to find out what it is, or come to Coffee and Conversation after the service, where we will reveal it. I'm so glad you've joined us today, and hope you'll stay for conversation and coffee hour following our service.
Hi. Today's chalice lighting words are by Edwin C. Lynn. We light the flame of knowledge, may understanding be with us. We light the flame of love, may caring be among us. We light the flame of holiness, may the unifying spirit be within us.
Good morning. My name is Erica Bartlett, and for our Time for All Ages today, I wanted to share a little of what I learned about competition from Odyssey of the Mind. When I was growing up, since my family wasn't into sports, the way I learned about team competitions was through Odyssey of the Mind, or OM. For those who aren't familiar with it, OM is a team-based program that challenges kids to solve problems creatively, choosing from one of 6 problems. For example, one problem is to create a structure made out of balsa wood that meets certain specifications and is designed to hold as much weight as possible. Here's what one of our structures looked like. And solving the problem needs to be incorporated into a skit of around 8 minutes long that will be performed in front of judges. So while it's not the same as sports, it does have a lot of similar components. I don't remember too much about the first time I participated in OM when I was in 5th grade, except that I was dressed in a pink and purple outfit. But I do remember the other years I was in it, with a team that included my brother and various of our friends, and with my parents, who were our coaches. Of those 5 years, we did the structure problem 3 times, a paper airplane problem once, and a classics problem once. We had a lot of fun with it. And here are a few photos so you can get a better idea of what it looked like. These are a few from when I was in 6th grade, when we did the structure problem with a skit called Bubba's Bouncy Spam Burgers. So here are some of the team members preparing props. Here I am holding up a chart to show a burger comparison. And here the team is pretending to be champions, even though we really didn't win. And a couple of years later, we did the Structure Salesman Challenge. So here's our salesman trying to sell the structure to a bunch of different people. First, a hunter, then a housewife, which was one of my brother's friends dressed in drag, and a young boy. Finally, the salesman and an engineer, played by my brother, tested the structure to see how much weight it would hold. Here's an example of what the structure looked like after the collapse. And finally, a team photo with me and my friend Shelley holding the broken pieces of the structure we built. It was an involved process, and during that time, I also learned a lot about competition. One of the first things was that while it sounded good to have lots of friends on the team, that occasionally made things a little difficult because sometimes it was easier to goof off with them than to sit down and solve the problem. My parents had to remind us a few times to get back to work. Maybe you've experienced this too. But on the plus side, working with friends helped us learn each other's strengths and the different talents that we brought to the competition. Some of my brother's friends were really good at the creative process of coming up with a skit, while my friend Shelley and I often worked on the structure or other props. Even now, it's kind of funny to think about the fact that I worked on the structure when it's my brother who became an engineer. As for the day of the competition, even with something like OM, it was easy to slip into thinking of other teams as the enemy. For some reason I don't remember, we focused on the team from Marshwood as the one to beat. And we were more critical of them than some of the other teams. I knew they weren't really the enemy, that they were just kids like us trying to do their best, but it was hard sometimes to get away from that negative focus on them. Mostly, though, we were too worried about how our performance would go, and that was when I learned how to carry on, even when things aren't going well. If you've been in a competition, you probably know that even if you practice something dozens of times, it doesn't always work during the competition itself. We had that happen. And with the structure problem, no matter how well it went, eventually the structure would snap and collapse when it had too much weight. And that was always a hard moment to watch. But I also learned that even if things didn't go your way, if you can have some fun, it's still worth doing. And most of the time, we did have fun. We laughed a lot, did a lot of experimenting, and even if we didn't win, people seemed to like our performances. And the last thing I learned is that pizza helps. At the end of every competition, whether we won or lost, we'd go out to our favorite place for pizza and root beer. And after that, somehow everything seemed okay again.
My name is Susie Hubley, and my pronouns are she and her. The topic of competition is fraught with conflicting feelings for me. Part of my brain loves it and clings to it, while the other part hates it and wants to run far, far away from it. I wanted to write an impersonal, maybe even amusing reflection, but no ideas came to me. What kept popping up was my love-hate relationship with the idea of competing for anything in any circumstance. In my time, I've come out on top in a few competitions, sometimes disguised as class rankings. All of them were scholastic, certainly not having anything to do with sports or physical prowess. The elation I felt from winning in these situations can't be described. I did a lot of hard work and it paid off. However, I don't really like the idea of measuring one human being against another. But at the same time, my own competitive streak can pop up in a flash. Quite often, the feeling that I need to prove myself, especially in interpersonal situations, does not lead to mature behavior on my part, and I hate that. It's entangled with insecurity, and it's something I'm working on. The other source of my hatred for competition is the awkwardness I felt and probably manifested as a child when it came to sports, and especially when teams were chosen. I can still feel the embarrassment and shame of those times welling up. As a result, I dislike sports. I don't do them or watch them. I never even liked our family pastime of croquet, where rules were meant to be broken, and much of our time was spent laughing at each other's witticisms, as well as the balls that got diverted by a tree root and went flying off into the pucker brush. Now, of course, I feel nostalgic for those sunny days in my parents' big backyard. I'm looking for the broader lesson in all this. On one hand, I want to say, lighten up. It's not all about you. Just enjoy being with people. Not being at the top doesn't mean you're bad or stupid. On the other hand, the uncomfortable feelings don't squash down very well. And I really don't like the idea of people's qualities being quantified on a relative scale. So I guess it's not about whether love or hate wins this particular competition. It's about seeing myself and others as whole, multidimensional human beings and as allies in life's journey. So I guess I just keep working on that.
Good morning. My name is Mike Luce. When competition came up as a topic for a service, the first thing I thought was, boy, do I have a lot to say on that. But like a lot of first thoughts, that one could have waited a little. I mean, it's not that I didn't have a lot of feelings about competition, just that coming up with something coherent to say wasn't that simple. I spent a lot of my life avoiding competitive situations. In sports or games, I hate being in a situation where somebody must lose. When I've been persuaded into a board game, I can get into the challenge of coming up with Scrabble words or something for a while. But if it's not close, or more likely after a certain amount of time, I'm just ready for it to be over. In fact, contests for the sake of contests of any type don't hold a lot of interest for me. I quite literally can't remember the last time I watched an entire ball game by myself and not as part of a social event. Outside of games, of course, a lot of life involves competition in one way or another. Sometimes it's on a very basic survival level. It can appear and is really pretty cold and dispassionate in some aspects. It's just what happens in nature's daily business, and life goes on, as they say. I struggle more at some times than at others in accepting this fact, but it's not like I have a choice or anything. What we humans have done with competition, though, that's a horse race of a different color. We invented the tournament, with ultimately only one winner. We also invented monopoly, just to show how evil human business can be if carried to the extreme. The winner is, by definition, all alone. I'm not sure I like the metaphor. I like as many winners as possible. That's not to say I haven't cast a skeptical eye sometimes on strained attempts to turn naturally competitive games into everyone's a winner event. How about some different games? I'd like our competitive focus to be more about ourselves. How can I do better? How can we do better? It's a temporal competition. Am I improving over time? That's an example of doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result and not meeting the old trope of that being the definition of insanity. Am I being a Pollyanna? Most of my life has been working as part of a team, whether earlier in life in a musical context or later in residential settings and community mental health team. Cooperation was always the touchstone. There was nothing to win, just things to accomplish, things to learn from and get better at doing. I vaguely remember an agency one time trying to start some type of competitive aspect among workers. I forget just how it was supposed to work, but everybody pretty much ignored it and it just went away quietly. Cooperation, even of a passive type like that, can accomplish many good things. There is a place for competition, and I don't even have to particularly like everything about that reality, but I do have to accept it. But when I have the choice, I'll look to folks with whom I can harmonize and do good things. That, for me, is winning.
Oh, hello. I'm Rick Kimball, and it must be early morning because here I am on my treadmill treading along. But let me turn it off for a bit so I can stop bobbing up and down. Every morning for years I climbed aboard this thing and competed with myself. Faster, farther, I commanded myself. I've got to beat yesterday's record. Then, one day, the bright light of understanding flashed in my little brain, and I told myself an alarming truth. If I keep breaking my own record for distance and speed, then at some point I'll be walking 400 miles a day before breakfast. I guess I'd better start missing the mark. So I did. New day after new day, I failed to beat or even meet my previous day's record. Now I'm back to something reasonable. It can be good to lose in competition, whether with self or other. I tweeted that news to Donald Trump the other day, and he replied that he wouldn't know because he's never lost. But think of it, what if you had won every competition you ever entered, like the spelling bees of your youth? You would have gone from school to region to state to national to international championships. Some contemporary P.T. Barnum might have seized you and caged you to show off in circuses or on late-night TV, spelling word after word that nobody else had ever heard of, which, by the way, would be cheating, because if nobody else had ever heard the word, how would they know whether you were spelling it correctly or not? Or consider baseball. What if you hit a home run every single time you got up to bat? In pickup games, in Little League and middle school games, in high school games, in college games, in minor league games, and in major league games, a homer every time, no matter the pitcher. You would destroy all of baseball, ruin America's pastime. Everyone would hate you. Yeah, it's important to lose at least occasional competitions. To lose is sometimes to win. Think back through your life. I'll bet you'll find some losses that were to your advantage. Maybe to the tennis opponent you later fell in love with and married, and then beat the next time out on the court. Maybe you were rejected by the top choice of college. and went to another that became the bedrock of your life. Or perhaps you lost out on one job but landed in another that led to a full and very, very rewarding career. Well, I won't tell you that I once proposed to another woman and got rebuffed, so I won out by marrying Tyrrell. That would be a good story, but it never happened, and I never wanted to marry anybody but Tyrrell. But I have had my own big share of losses. I could read you a whole pile of rejection slips for brilliant novels that remain in my closet unread by anybody but Tyrrell, and she might have skipped a few pages. But these losses have allowed me to lead the life I have led, and it's a good one. Who wanted to be famous and rich anyway? An article in a recent New Yorker magazine explored the concept of alternate selves. Who we might have been if we'd made different decisions, experienced slightly different happenings. These are fascinating questions that can help us see how different wins and losses could have reshaped us. But the history of what might have been is not, and never has been, a good history. What really did happen counts more, and also proves over and over again that losing a competition, a struggle, a fight, can be beneficial. Winning can be great, but losing can be greater still. It's good practice, too, because sometime we're each going to lose the fight for life. That can have its own rewards, they say, but for the moment I'm still in the battle, so excuse me, please, while I get back to my walk, singing as I go, singing yay, singing hey. Today I might have a great big and wonderful loss. Blessed be, and have a good one.
Good morning, I'm Anna Noyes-Benoit. Competition versus cooperation, competition versus collaboration, competition versus creativity. Does competition divide us while cooperation unite us towards a common goal? Confession. I grew up in a very competitive family with the distinct disadvantage of being the youngest by 5 or more years. My parents had met and fell in love while playing competitive bridge, and this was a main focus of their relationship. In our home, we had the trophy room, which displayed cups, plates, and trophies won during regional and national bridge events. My mother kept very close track of her master points and was delighted when her monthly total was higher than my dad's. She also happily related a story of when a large tournament was scheduled in Boston. My dad, who was often her partner, came to her and told her he needed to play with a man who practiced a more precise bidding system. My mom was okay with this and found a woman to play the same event with. Well, you can guess which team took first place and which team took third. Board games were the most obvious example of our competitive family time. After several rounds of, say, Monopoly, I, the youngest, would have lost and then been offered the role of caretaker. I could stay in the game and collect $100 every time we went around go, but my main job was keeping my siblings' hotels and motels in straight and orderly fashion. One of our own children was very successful at competitive sports and is now involved in coaching and supporting his own 2 daughters in their various activities. As a result, they're often unavailable for other family times which conflict with practices or games. So I asked him why he thought competitive sports was so important, and he talked about friendships and teamwork and referred to flow state. Flow state occurs when an individual is fully engaged in an activity, whether it be artistic, creative, or athletic, and has been described as a state of ecstasy. While in flow state, the individual is unconcerned and unaware of distracting thoughts and fully focused and engaged. The internal state has been described as bliss. However, engaging in competition has also been compared to saying to your opponent, "Hope you have a good day. Hope I have a better one." So, does competition lead to excellence, or is it counterproductive? And to quote Valentina Rice, "So last century."
My name is Erica Bartlett, and I recently finished the book, The Monopolists, which tells the century-plus history of the game Monopoly. It's been extremely popular for decades, and the book includes this quote from Edward Parker as part of his explanation why. Monopoly appeals to the competitive nature of people. The player can always say to himself, "I'm going to get the better of the other guy." People can also play Monopoly as a sort of relief from the tensions of everyday life. That desire to escape and focus on something other than everyday life made the game a success during the Great Depression, and again during this past year of the pandemic. Hasbro had record sales last year, and Monopoly was the biggest seller. And yet, when I think about the games of Monopoly my family played when I was growing up, I can't say that it was exactly an escape from tension. In fact, in some ways, it created more tension because it brought out everyone's competitive nature. And I have a feeling other families might be the same. My dad, for example, is very competitive when it comes to games. He was rather ruthless with his siblings when growing up, particularly when playing croquet and knocking their balls as far as possible, even into the street. When I was a kid, he got fixated on the game Cubert. It wasn't enough for him to have a higher score than anyone else in the family. He wanted to beat the game altogether. I don't remember how many hours he played it, but eventually he reached the top level and won. Thanks to that competitive streak, he was baffled when my friend Shelley and I played cards because we were nice to each other. When playing cribbage, if I noticed that she missed some points when counting her hand, I'd point them out, and she'd do the same for me. And when playing rummy, if one of us was about to go out, We'd try to wait a round or two so the other person could get some points out of their hand. Shelley and I also played poker with a few other friends in high school study hall, but we only played for points, not money, because we wanted to keep it friendly. To me, this didn't detract from the fun at all. In fact, it made card games more enjoyable because I don't like being ruthless with friends. I worry that the cutthroat aspect meant for the game will spill over into real life. My preference for playing nicely is also why one of my favorite movies about competition is Searching for Bobby Fischer. It's based on a true story about a 7-year-old chess prodigy named Josh, who won all his games effortlessly for quite a while. Then he met another boy, also a prodigy, and Josh got scared that he would lose for the first time. So Josh's teacher tried to get him back in the game by telling him that Josh needed to have contempt for his opponents, to think of them as beneath him, even to hate them. I think this happens too often, that when we're in a competition, we can slip into thinking of the other person as the enemy and somehow lesser than us. Josh, though, stayed true to himself. But I don't hate them, he said. And when he finally played against the other boy, Josh played nicely. When he saw that he was going to win, he offered a draw because he knew how hard it would be for the other boy to lose. The boy didn't accept, but Josh tried. This also reminds me of stories I've heard about runners who've helped competitors cross the finish line after a stumble. And on some of the cooking competition shows I watch, sometimes one person will help out another or share ingredients as needed. To me, that's the ideal of competition, to try to become better, to strive to win, but not at the expense of empathy or to the point of thinking that you're so much better than everyone else. So even though it might mean winning a little less often or not winning by much, I prefer to play by the nice rules.
Competition, as we have been hearing, is a pleasure for some and an occasional problem for others. But sometimes competition escalates into conflict that escalates again into war, a vicious disaster for multitudes. War then begets its competing opposite, a struggle for peace, conducted through demonstration, through negotiation, through tears and speeches and song. Listen now as our choir responds to Competition Run Amok, responds with a simple, even haunting plea for peace. When will the fighting cease? Asks the song of that title by Nick Page and Nita Penfold. When will the fighting cease? When will we live in peace? And it answers, when our love breaks boundaries. Again, when our love breaks boundaries.
Good morning. My name is Keith Prairie, and my pronouns are he and him. I'm a member of the worship committee, and this is my piece this morning. When is enough enough? I've had my share of competition through playing games with family and friends. And I've got to say, certain games do bring out a competitive spirit. There were board games like Monopoly that fostered ruthless appropriation of capitalist values, and Life, which was less ruthless but still maintained a goal of having the most at the end. These were games that extolled good American values: money, real estate, taxes, avoiding jail, and being of the owning class. And the card games enjoyed by my family, games like Slapjack and Concentration, one with quick accelerating action, the other with calculated progression of finding and remembering the patterns. And there were games I tried to avoid because I'm not good at particular kinds of activity. I do not like games where spelling or transferring meaning from word to word is important. I do not like crosswords or boggle, but I do like the dictionary game, perhaps because I like making up false definitions to words unfamiliar to me. When I was at the College of the Atlantic, we frequently had volleyball games after lunch, and I was often one of the instigators, running around making eye contact with many and asking the one-word question, "Volleyball?" It was amazing to be a part of COA games and be surrounded by hippie types and see how competitive we new gamers could be. New games were from New Game books that came out shortly after the Whole Earth catalog in the 60s. New games, which were friendlier, or less competitive games, were created so we could all feel better about not losing all the time, and to take those down a notch who were always in the winning circle. Well, maybe that last part wasn't in the book. New Games is where mainly men, a men's conference I've been going to for years, picked up a game called Spaceball. Spaceball is an amalgamation of soccer, volleyball, and frisbee. It is played with a volleyball. It's very fun, and it's quite active. And now there's a new game called Cosmic Wimpout. Well, maybe not so new. Few of you have heard of it. It's a complex dice game played with 5 dice and has the flaming sun, flash, freight train, train wrecks, and supernovas. It's far too complex to explain here, but if you're interested and have an inkling of competition deep down inside you, there's a website, cosmicwimpout.com. Go ahead, visit it. I dare you.
Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you? Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the word, and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you? Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend. And like a willow with the wind, let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must die. A time for joy, a time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you? Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. If nothing's wrong, then nothing's right. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, bear the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance.
We close our service with these thoughts. Within the complex, often obscure nature of our relationships with others, competition is only one element, and like all the others, it's interwoven with everything else to the point where it can emit contradictory and changing information when put under a microscope. Perhaps it is love that lights the structure from within and gives our relations with others a unified meaning. May your relationships be suffused with love this week and always.